Last week, when we buried my brother, there was so much that I wanted to say, and I couldn't do it, you see. I simply couldn't speak. I didn't express myself. It's been a burden on my heart ever since. So, I thank you for coming. Thank you for this second opportunity. I'll do my best to tell you some things about my brother, Vincent. I'm really not sure how to begin. I suppose I should tell you that he was a lover. It's true. My brother Vincent van Gogh, the lover. He was. He was a lover of God, a lover of love, and of course, a lover of art. During his lifetime, he thought that he had failed at all three. To say that he worked hard at all three simply wouldn't be true. Because you see, Vincent didn't work at things. He attacked them. He surrounded them, schemed, made plans. He gathered his forces like a general going into battle. And then, with what I suppose you might call an overdeveloped sense of drama, he would attack. For years he fought, battled against everything. From the time he was 27, 10 years ago, until he died last week, he poured more energy, passion, more love into his life and work than any 10 men. I'm not going to ask you to believe that he was perfect. He wasn't. He was far from perfect. And he seemed to thrive on failure. I'm sorry, Vincent, but it's true. Never accepted even the slightest success. Wanted it? Yes. He hungered for it. But he was terrified of it. He used to say, Theo, let me tell you about success. The fireflies of South America are extremely successful. They burn so brightly in the night, ladies stick pins in them to wear them in their hair. So much for success. Terrified of it. Never allowed himself to believe that he'd accomplished anything. For example, I sent him that recent newspaper article by Albert Aurier. I'm sure most of you have read it. Aurier is the most respected art critic in France today. He referred to Vincent as the vanguard, called him the leader of the Impressionists. Listen to what he said. Vincent perceives the imperceptible and the secret characteristics of line and form under an incessant and awesome shimmering of every imaginable effect of light, polished to a brilliant and enchanting iridescence. Gardens of flowers appear like the most luxurious jewelry, made from rubies, agates, onyxes, and emeralds. A worthy descendant of the Dutch masters. Now, I would call that very flattering, wouldn't you? What was Vincent's response? Dear Theo, thank you very much for sending me the article. Please ask the gentleman not to write any more articles on my painting. Insist upon this. To begin with, he is mistaken about me. To make pictures is difficult enough, but if I hear them spoken of, it gives me more pain than he knows. Yesterday, I sent off 3 parcels by post, mostly studies of autumn, and they're giving me a lot of trouble. Sometimes I think they're ugly. Sometimes they seem all right to me. You tell me not to worry too much. Better days will yet come for me. Well, if I could one day prove that I have not impoverished my family, that would comfort me. I doubt it. Comfort. Vincent could never accept comfort. He gave it unselfishly. He couldn't accept it. I don't know why. For some reason, for Vincent, it always seemed necessary to find the most difficult, the hardest way. Comfort. Was it comfort he was after 13 years ago when he decided he was going to spread the word of God? You see, that was his first great passion. He wanted to follow in the footsteps of our father and grandfather, to be a minister, to preach. For 2.5 years, his letters were full of God and the gospel. Detail. No day passes without praying to God and without speaking about him. May God grant me the wisdom which I need and give me what I so fervently desire. Detail. I've applied for a position as evangelist among the miners in the coal mines. In Belgium, in the south, there's a district called the Borinage, with a population of laborers who work in the mines. I should like very much to go there as an evangelist, preaching the gospel to the poor. Light that rises in the darkness, says the gospel. Who will need this most? Who will have ears for it? Those who walk in darkness in the center of the earth. I begged him not to go. Come home. Work with me in the gallery. Wait for a better position. No. He had to go. Had to go to bury himself in the coal mines, in that miserable hole in the Borinage. That's where he went to seek his comfort. Dear Teo, I write to you from the Borinage. There have been many cases of typhoid and fever. Most of the miners are thin, pale, tired, emaciated, weather-beaten, aged before their time. The women as a whole are faded and worn. Around the mine are poor miners' huts with a few dead trees, black from smoke, thorn hedges, dung hills, ash dumps, and heaps of useless coal. That sounds very comfortable, doesn't it? Teo, I'm a man of passions. That is an understatement. He wanted to stay there. He wanted a permanent appointment in that misery, to spend his life in that hole, because he was at home with those people, with the poor, the peasants, with the outcasts. With them, he felt at home, and he preached. I am a stranger on the earth. Hide not thy commandments from me. There is an old belief, and it is a good belief, that our life is a pilgrim's progress, and that we are strangers on the earth. But that though this be so, yet we are not alone, for our Father is with us. We are pilgrims. Our life is a long walk or journey from earth to heaven, yet we may not live on casually, hour by hour. We have a strife to strive and a fight to fight. The end of our pilgrimage is the entering in our Father's house, where are many mansions where he has gone before us to prepare a place for us. There is sorrow in the hour when a man is born in the world, but also joy unspeakable, thankfulness so great it reaches the highest heavens. Yes, the angels of God, they smile, they hope, and they rejoice when a man is born in the world. There is sorrow in the hour of death, but also joy unspeakable when it is the hour of death of one who has fought a good fight. There is one who has said, I am the resurrection and the life. Of any man believe in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. God, by the things of daily life, teaches us higher things, that our life is a pilgrim's progress. We are strangers on the earth, but we have a God and Father who preserveth strangers, and we are all brethren. Amen. And now, the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, the Father, the fellowship of the Holy Ghost be with us forevermore. Amen. He was just a little bit overzealous, don't you think? His parishioners loved him. They trusted him. See, he actually believed one must be poor to preach to the poor. So he gave away all his possessions, covered his face with soot, lived on bread and coffee. He gave away his bed. He slept on a straw mat on the floor of a hut. Well, it was too much. Too much for the church authorities, you see. He wasn't exactly their ideal image of a proper servant of God. So they forced him to give it up. They forced him out of the job, and he was lost. Lost. He was cut off from everything he believed in. He was lost. For a year he drifted, searching for himself, for his life, and God knows I didn't help. I did a stupid thing. I'll never forgive myself for it. I told him he was being idle. He said to me, Teo, you might see a bird in a cage. You might say, look here, this bird has everything it needs, and yet it is idle. Teo, don't you see? That bird is longing to fly. And I am that bird. At last, he wrote to me from Brussels a year later, October 1880. Dear Teo, if I had stayed a month longer in the Belgian Black Country, I should have been sick with misery. My only anxiety is, how can I be of use in the world? How can I learn more, serve some purpose, be of some good? If I can only succeed someday in learning to draw well. I've sketched a drawing representing miners, men and women going to the shaft in the morning through the snow by a path along a hedge of thorns. I should like very much to make that drawing over again better than I have done it now. And then he says, it is a hard and difficult struggle to learn to draw well. Yes, that's true. Very true. But not hard enough for Vincent. No, not difficult enough for my brother Vincent. His passion for art would have to wait. First, he had to fall in love. With love. He said, my life and my love are one. I can tell you it was one disaster. Since the beginning of this love, I have felt that unless I gave myself up to it entirely, without any restriction, with all my heart, there was no chance for me whatever. And even so, my chance is slight. But what is it to me whether my chance is slight or great? I mean, must I consider this when I love? No. No reckoning. One loves because one loves. Now, listen to this logic. When we love, we keep our heads clear and we do not cloud our minds. Nor do we hide our feelings, nor smother the fire and the light, but simply say, thank God, I love. Pages and pages of that kind of thing he wrote. Volumes, this about his love, that about his love. I hope not to leave a single thing undone that may bring me nearer to her. It is my intention to love her so long that she'll love me in the end. Yes. Tale, this summer, a deep love has grown in my heart for our cousin, Key. When I told her this, she answered that she could never return my feelings. The man was outrageous. This relationship was impossible. It was never even a relationship. The whole family was dead set against it. And Key, she wouldn't have a single thing to do with him. So, why not face the reality, Vincent? Why not make it easy on yourself? No. That would make too much sense. Now, like a general, he prepared his attack. My position has become sharply outlined. I believe I will have the greatest trouble with the family. For the present, I consider her refusal as a block of ice that I press to my heart to thaw it. Which will win, the coldness of that block of ice or the warmth of my heart? Now we all know, everyone except my brother Vincent knows, that a block of ice pressed to the heart produces a wet shirt. I approached her, at first crudely, awkwardly, but still firmly. And I said, Key, I love you. I love you as myself. And then she answered, no, never, never. Very encouraging, wouldn't you say? Oh. I don't mean to be cruel. I'm sorry if I seem to be. My brother Vincent spoke often of love, and beautifully. For him, love, beauty, God, they were all one. It was all the same thing. He once wrote, I think that everything that is really good and beautiful, of inward, moral, spiritual, sublime beauty in men and their works, comes from God. I always think the best way to know God is to love many things. Love a friend, love a wife, something, whatever you like. But one must love. That leads to God. Well said. Well said, Vincent, but why must you always suffer so? Why must you always seek out disaster? Tale, since I really love, there's more reality in my drawings. At present, I begin to feel I have a draftsman's fist. Tale, I must see her face again. I must speak to her once more. I want money for the trip to Amsterdam. I sent it to him. I sent him the money. And I wish to God I never had. I wish that this time, one time, I'd had the strength to refuse him. I might have saved him some pain. He went to Amsterdam. Key heard he was coming and she left the house. Vincent burst into the dining room and he confronted her father. Where is she? Where is Key? Her father said she's not here. And Vincent wouldn't believe him. He couldn't believe that she'd actually left the house to avoid seeing him. Please, Uncle, please let me see her. Let me talk to her. I know I'm not successful yet, but I will be. All I ask is a chance to prove myself. Please. Just let me speak with Key for as long as I can hold my hand in this flame. I am a stranger. Hide not thy commandments from me. A stranger on the earth. Teo, I write from The Hague. I'm staying in a little inn. I've found a woman. Not young, not beautiful, rather tall and strongly built. She does not have ladies' hands like Key's, but the hands of one who works. She is not coarse or common and has something very womanly about her. She has had many cares, one can see that, and life has been hard for her. She's not distinguished. Nothing extraordinary, nothing unusual. Teo, to me, there is such a wonderful charm in that slight fadedness, that something over which life has passed. It is not the first time that I have been unable to resist that feeling of affection and love for those women who are so damned and condemned and despised by the clergyman from the pulpit. This woman has not cheated me. He who regards all these women as cheats, how wrong he is, and how little understanding does he show. This woman has been very good to me. Very good and very kind. The clergymen call us sinners, conceived and born in sin. Is it a sin to love, to need love, not to be able to live without love? I think a life without love is a sinful condition. I cannot, I may not, I will not live without love. Is it clear? She was a woman of the streets. My brother's new love. A woman of the streets. She was coarse, common, vulgar. Everyone who met her, including me, was appalled by her. She had a nasty tongue, vicious temper, she drank, and she smoked cigars. Why? Why, Vincent? Why? You understand, of course, that I was now supporting not just my artist brother, but this woman, and her child, and her unborn child, and eventually even her mother. And you understand that I was now the one who had to deal with our parents. Vincent couldn't do that. It was impossible, always impossible. Every meeting between Vincent and Father ended in nothing but pain, terrible arguments. Father always finding fault, Vincent always more and more stubborn, difficult. So, I was the negotiator. And I tried. I was foolish enough to think that our parents might accept the circumstances. So, I tried. Now, how do you present this kind of news to your parents? To a minister and his wife. Father, there's some news about Vincent. Well, it seems he's found a woman. No, Father, I don't think it's very likely that you would know her. Yes, Mother, I have met her. What is she like? I would say she's interesting, very interesting. No, Father, she's not employed. Vincent tells me she's given up her career. By the way, there's a child, and she's expecting another. No, not by Vincent, no. Well, we don't seem to know exactly who the father is. For some strange reason, our parents were not terribly understanding. Father said, we'll take legal action. We'll have him declared unfit to manage his own affairs. We'll have him put into an asylum. Well, what could I do? What could I do? I was trapped. I was caught between Vincent on the one side, my parents on the other. There was nothing I could do. Trapped. For the sake of the family, I had to ask them to leave her. I used the only weapon I had, I threatened to cut off his financial support. My dear brother, I tell you, you have this much in common with father. You are cruel in your worldly wisdom. I repeat the word, cruel. But what could be more cruel than to deprive such an unfortunate and withered woman and her child of support? No, no, no. Don't think it'll help if you reason that it was just a question of a fated whore and her bastards. So much more the motive for deep compassion, which I showed and you didn't. I'll do my best to work on. Please bear in mind, I don't want you to think the help you gave me in the past is something you're obliged to do. You weren't obliged to do it before, you're not obliged to do it now. It's been a voluntary thing on your part for which I feel a real obligation to you. Now, I'm working on some drawings of the Weavers. It would disappoint me if you were to send these back to me. Seems necessary for me to point out, when I send you some drawings, you should at least show them to somebody. I was asked 3 times last week by absolute strangers, why is it you never sell your work? That's the truth, Teo. You've never sold a single piece of work for me. Not for much, nor for little. In fact, you haven't even tried. Not so long ago, you told me yourself you are a merchant. All right, sir. If I send you a certain number of drawings, may I at least count on you showing them? Just because we began as friends, with a mutual feeling of respect, I won't suffer it to degenerate into protection. If you don't do anything with my work, I don't cherish your protection. Now you tell me my work is almost saleable, but, oh, Teo, that's exactly where I was with you a few years ago. You've never shown me any sign you believe in my progress. Your opinion of my work must be very low indeed. You won't show it. You won't soil your hands with it. No sign you believe in my progress. Instead, there's the money. But for the work, nothing. I can no longer live on that. It's getting too lonesome, too cold, too empty. He was amazing. The man was amazing. I won't say ungrateful, just amazing. He lived on bread and cheese. Went for weeks without a piece of meat. He saved the money for paints, canvases, models. It was a hard time, a very hard time. I don't know how we struggled through it. It was all I could do to send him what I did, and still maintain my own affairs. And he was always needing, pleading for more, more, more. Not for himself, for the work. God, what it must have cost his pride to ask for the money. That must be fair to myself. Whenever I wanted to exhibit his work, he wouldn't let me. There was always some excuse. No, I'm not ready. No, I don't have enough paintings to show. No, this gallery is too dark. Oh, that gallery has a bad reputation. No. We'll wait. We'll wait until I have 30 or 40 more large canvases finished, and then we'll show them. But only in your apartment. Wouldn't allow me to properly exhibit his work. Somehow we survived. I worked on at the gallery. I found a wonderful wife. And Johanna has never once complained about the money that went to Vincent. And Vincent painted. And he studied, and he painted, and he struggled, and he painted. And it was a strange time, very strange time. He was at the same time of 2 minds about his work. Sometimes he was sensitive, sometimes secure. Sometimes he could be bitterly hurt by criticism, other times secure enough to laugh at it. I can tell you this, now the work was growing. It was really growing. He said, I want my paintings and my subjects to live, not just satisfy the academicians, not to be academically correct, but to live. I must learn to paint what I feel, not what I see, but what I feel about what I see. Now, I adore the figures by Michelangelo, though the legs are too long and the back sides are too large. I want to learn to make these very incorrectnesses, these deviations, remodelings, changes in reality, so that they may become lies, if you like, but truer than the literal truth. Teo, I'm finished at the Antwerp Academy, Teo. I'm finished. It's a rigid, formal institution, dead, bound by tradition. Not a place for an impressionist to flourish. My ideas drove the instructors quite mad. They treated me as if I was spreading some kind of a disease. Last week, we were given a cast of the Venus de Milo to draw from. I was struck by the power of that figure. So I accentuated her hips. Well, the instructor was a purist. He tore my drawing. He tore it with his crayon. I rose from my chair and I said to him, "You don't know what a woman is like, damn you. A woman must have hips and buttocks and a pelvis in which she can hold a child." And that was the last lesson I ever took at the Antwerp Academy. He was struggling with new ideas, new visions of his own. He couldn't allow himself to be smothered, I suppose, by pompous professors. He was a better teacher than some of them. He loved to teach. The few students he had adored him. He even tried to teach me. He did. He urged me to paint. "Hey, old man, you've been a dealer in art for quite some time now. Have you ever considered taking up the brush yourself?" I said, "No, thank you, my dear brother. I have this nagging habit which prevents me." He said, "What nagging habit?" I said, "Eating regularly." He finally convinced me. He convinced me I should try. How could I shirk my responsibility? How could I deny my talent to the world? Well, the next thing I knew, Vincent had furnished me with paints, canvas, easel, brushes, and a lot of enthusiasm. He was like a frantic mother hen standing over my shoulder, offering advice. "Perspective, oh boy. Perspective, give it depth. Balance that composition. Be forceful." Then he snatched the brush from my hand and scratched furiously on the canvas. "A line here, some shading there, some color, balance, composition, forceful. There. Now you've got it, old man." And don't forget to clean out your brushes. Well, the oil will harden, they'll become useless. This went on for a week. And then I was ready. The tempest of my genius was struggling to be set free. I'd already chosen a perfect scene. A little marketplace. Farmers with their donkey-drawn carts, fruits, vegetables, shining pewters from London, fabrics and tapestries from exotic places in the Far East. The scene was a collage of brilliant color. A little yellow here, a little green. Slush some composure about. Do as Vincent said. Balance, perspective. Done. I couldn't wait. Couldn't wait to show Vincent. I hurried home as fast as I could. "Vincent, Vincent." I have something to show you. I suppose you're wondering what I've been up to this morning. Well, the fact is I've been painting. Vincent, I want you to know that if ever I should achieve recognition for this work, I'm going to tell the world that you are responsible for my success. Strange look came over his face. And then he said, "Well, old man, did you remember to clean out your brushes?" And then he went off and got drunk someplace. I didn't see him for 2 days. I really think it's just as well. One artist in the family was enough. He stayed with me here in Paris for a while. I must say, his visit wore me out. I think I should have become quite ill if he'd stayed any longer. What can I say? He was so full of confidence, so strong in his opinions, fierce, absolutely fierce in his arguments. He went on endlessly. Night after night, I'd come home from work at the gallery, and it would begin. On and on he went. If I tried to avoid the argument, Vincent argued both sides himself. I tried to escape by going to bed. Useless. He'd pull a chair up by the bedside. "Teo, we must form a union among the painters. We must see to it that the artists get their fair share of the profits. Now, why should the artist pour his life into the work only for someone else to get all the profit after he dies? Teo, are you awake?" He wore people out. He did. He wore people out. My best friends found various excuses to avoid coming to the apartment. Toulouse-Lautrec said, "Teo, please, ask him to go south for the light." While he was with me, There were some great times. Wonderful, wonderful evenings of conversation. He met so many artists whose work he admired. He met Pissarro, Seurat, Toulouse-Lautrec, Bernard, Gauguin, and they would talk for hours and hours about everything, about their problems, about their work, about art dealers. Gauguin. Monsieur Paul Gauguin. Oh, God. Oh, I wish he had never met Gauguin. That was tragic. The beginning of the end. Vincent moved south to Arles, and it was a relief. My health wasn't too good. It was a blessing to live quietly again. But Vincent was lonely, terribly lonely, and he wasn't feeling well himself. He worked hard. He did. He painted in periods of frenzy, and then he would drink. Yes, he drank to calm himself. And always he was lonely. Gauguin was in bad times, with a reputation as an artist, yes, but no money, no support. Well, for Vincent, that was perfect. He'd found another soul to save. We must help Gauguin. We must bring him here to Arles for a rest. It would be good for both of us. We will start a community of artists, and Gauguin will head the studio. Now, can you imagine? For weeks, Vincent painted day and night for Gauguin, to impress Gauguin. Everything. To decorate his room. We must make his room warm and cheerful. We must buy furniture for Gauguin. We must decorate for Gauguin. Everything for Gauguin. And then he came. Gauguin arrived. I sent him the money, and he arrived. And for Vincent, the ground shook when Gauguin walked. Why? God, why? Why did he admire him so? Yes, he's a fine artist, but Vincent was doing beautiful work himself. Well, they worked together. They argued together. They whored together. I'm writing in haste, as we have loads of work to do. Gauguin and I intend to make a tour of the brothels pretty often, so as to study them. Yes. He's working on a portrait of me. Gauguin is working on a portrait of me. Gauguin is good for me. Gauguin is wise. Gauguin is brilliant. Gauguin is a bastard, and that's the simple truth. It's the truth. I know him. He's a pompous, sarcastic, self-righteous bore. They began to argue violently. And of course, Gauguin threatened to leave. Well, he certainly knew how to do that, didn't he? He'd already deserted his wife and 5 children, left them without a penny. Vincent was exhausted. He was terrified of being left alone again. And Gauguin's a clever man. He knew exactly how to drive Vincent right to the edge. Night after night, arguments, terrible arguments. One night, Vincent threw a drink in Gauguin's face. That ended that argument. The next night, an argument again, and Gauguin walked out, walked out into the night, leaving Vincent like a matador walking away from a wounded bull. Vincent followed him into the streets carrying a razor. Gauguin heard him coming, stopped, turned. They stared at each other in the darkness. And of course, Vincent couldn't hurt Gauguin, could he? He couldn't hurt this god that walked the earth, could he? So he went back to his own room and he hurt himself instead. Yes, I'm sure you've all heard about it by now. Cut off his own ear, or part of it. Wrapped it in a cloth, tied a ribbon around it, and carried it to the local brothel. There was a prostitute there named Rachel. She enjoyed mocking her customers like a parrot. 5 francs to cut off your ear. 5 francs to cut off your ear. Vincent handed her the package, and he said, guard this object carefully. Then he went back to his room and collapsed.
5 francs to cut off your ear. 5 francs to cut off your ear.
Oh, Jesus, Vincent! Won't you ever learn? Love the poor, Vincent. Love the lost, the outcasts, the destitute, the homeless. Even love a bastard like Gauguin. But for God's sake, Vincent, won't you ever learn to love yourself? Dear Theo, I write to you in full possession of my faculties, and not as a madman, but as the brother you know. This is the truth. A certain number of people here, there were more than 80 signatures, addressed a petition to the mayor describing me as a man not fit to be at liberty, or something like that. The commissioner of police then gave the order to shut me up for the good of the community. Anyhow, here I am, shut up in a cell under lock and key and with keepers, without my guilt being proved or even open to proof. If I did not have your friendship, I should be driven to suicide. And cowardly as I am, I should commit it in the end. If the police had protected my liberty by preventing the children and even the grown-ups from crowding around my house and climbing the windows as they have done, as if I were a curious animal, I should have more easily retained my self-possession. In any event, I have done no harm to anyone. The next 6 months were the best and the worst. Vincent's painting had come out of the darkness. His colors were seasoned, bright. His draftsman's fist was sure. He saw the wheat fields, cornfields, sunflowers, painted them with his own special vision, special beauty. He said, "I feel as if nature has spoken to me." The doctor's report was encouraging. Vincent was hopeful, but he had a relapse. I think worse than the hell, the torment of the illness, they were the good people of the town of Arles. They considered him mad, you see, some kind of freak. In fact, they would have driven him mad. They teased him, they laughed at him, they chased him through the streets. They climbed the trees outside his windows to get a better look at the creature. Throw us an ear, throw us an ear. They even threw garbage at him. He hadn't hurt anyone but himself. Could have responded to being loved, being liked, even just being left alone. No, no. They pursued him like a hunted animal. Vincent was not mad, but he chose the relative peace of the asylum at Saint-Remy. There, among the mad, he finally found some peace. When he painted in the garden, the patients would come and watch. Though here there are some patients very seriously ill, the fear and horror of madness that I used to have has lessened a great deal. Though here you continually hear terrible cries and howls like beasts in a menagerie, in spite of that, people get to know each other, and they help each other when their attacks come on. When I'm working in the garden, they all come to look, and I assure you they have the discretion and the manners to leave me alone. More than I can say for the good people of the town of Arles. Now everything that he was, all the beauty, the passion, the power of his love for life, for humanity, for nature, now it came together in the brilliance of his work. His talent, his draftsmanship, his control of his work was now so complete he could turn out 2 beautiful canvases in a day. He'd start painting at sunrise, paint furiously until noon, finish a canvas, eat a piece of bread, turn his easel in another direction, and start again. In the evening, he'd stumble home exhausted, with 2 magnificent canvases under his arm. And then sometimes he went out and painted at night. He put candles on his hat to throw light on his canvas. In the last 70 days, these last 70 days of his life, he turned out 100 pieces of work, 70 oils and 30 drawings. In the last year of his life, he turned out 200 pieces of work. not the work of a madman. Sick, yes. He was very sick. Epilepsy. Yes, epilepsy. That's what the doctors told me. I have their reports. From Dr. Ray, his physician at Arles, epileptic crisis. From Dr. Perron, chief surgeon of the asylum at Saint Remy, attack of epilepsy. Seizures. Had a number of seizures. When the attacks came, they terrified him. They'd terrify anyone. The man was drained, physically, emotionally drained. And the attacks were nightmares, voices, visions, hallucinations. When they came, he didn't know what he was doing. One time, he was found eating his own paints. Another time, he drank the kerosene from the lamps. One day, he was allowed to go into the fields alone to paint. He didn't come back. When they found him, he was clinging desperately to a tree. He screamed when they tried to tear him away. He believed that tree had captured his soul. If he left it, he was going to die. When each of these attacks was over, he lived in terror of the next one, which he knew was going to come. And still, somehow, I don't know how, in spite of all of this, when he was well enough to paint, he painted. Through the iron-barred window of my room, I see a square field of wheat in an enclosure, a perspective above which I see the morning sun rising in all its glory. And then, at last, one day, one joyous, miraculous, incredible day, just 4.5 months ago, we sold one of his paintings. It was The Red Vines. It sold in Brussels for 400 francs. His first sale. Well, it should have been a beginning. His first sale should have been a beginning. He was living at Auvers. He had a room over the Café Ravoux. He was under the care of Dr. Gachet, a good, kind man with an interest in art. He had a beautiful place to work. He had his wheat fields, cornfields, sunflowers. He had someone to care for him. He was getting recognition, and he had sold. I wrote to him and I said, Vincent, we're almost at the top of the hill. You and I are like a pair of horses in harness. And we're almost at the top of the hill. It's time to celebrate. My dear brother, there are many things I should like to write you about, but I feel it's useless. There's this that I've always told you. I shall always consider that you are something other than a simple dealer in art. You have your part in the actual production of canvases, which even in the cataclysm retain their peace. Now, this is where we are. This is what we've got to. Things are very strained between dealers in pictures by dead artists and living artists. My own work, I'm risking my life for it. And my reason has half founded owing to it. That's all right. But you can choose your side, I think, acting with true humanity. But what's the use? What's the use? And that is the last letter he ever wrote. I found it in his pocket. Last week, I received a telegram from Dr. Gachet telling me that Vincent had injured himself seriously. I should come. Dr. Gachet was with him when I arrived. Vincent was sitting up in his bed. He was calmly smoking his pipe. His face was pale, but peaceful. On Sunday morning, as usual, just before noon, Vincent had walked out into the cornfields near the edge of town, carrying his easel. He was also carrying a gun. He shot himself in the breast. Must have laid all day in the hot sun. It was long after supper when he finally staggered back to the cafe. He managed to stumble up the stairs, and he collapsed in his bed. I sat by his bedside. I held his hands in mine. He looked up at me with those sad, innocent eyes. He had that same look as once when we were children, he'd broken one of my toys. And he was so very, very sorry for it. He asked my forgiveness for costing me so much money through the years. He was surprised that he was still lingering on. He said, I've been a failure at so many things in my lifetime. I hope I haven't failed at this as well. Dr. Gachet said to him, Vincent, you have a strong constitution. The wound isn't really that serious. Your chances of recovery are good. But he wasn't going to have it. He wouldn't have it. That stubborn mule wasn't going to have it. Now he was determined he was going to succeed in his own death. We talked into the night about our childhood in the Brabant, about the wheat fields and the orchards, and that old stone barn where we used to play. And then, late in the night, we felt his hands weaken. His voice grew fainter. I sat on the bed. I cradled him in my arms. I kissed his face. He looked up at me and he said, Teo, I wish I could die like this. And then he closed his eyes, and I felt his heart stop. I held him close. I didn't want to let him go. I felt his soul lingering near me for those next few moments. And then something went out of me, and he was gone. And the minister at Auvers said that because Vincent had taken his own life, the church couldn't condone such practice by allowing the service to be conducted there. So, Rebu closed the cafe. We laid Vincent out on the billiard table and covered him with a sheet until a carpenter could be found to make a box for him. And all his friends came. They all came for the last time to see him. Even Toulouse-Lautrec, who himself had just been released from the asylum at Neuilly-sur-Seine. And they all brought dahlias and sunflowers because yellow was his favorite color. We hung his most recent canvases about the walls. Revu lit some candles, and Dr. Gachet arranged Vincent's easel and his paint box and his little stool at the foot of the table. And the minister wouldn't come to the cafe. So Dr. Gachet gave the service. His voice was so broken, I could barely understand him. But he's a brave man, and he did love Vincent. He loved him so. And I couldn't speak. I couldn't speak at all. We were even denied the use of the church's hearse. So Adeline Revu rode horseback across the bridge to Mairie. She borrowed a hearse from the abbé there. And at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we took him to the cemetery. It's a pretty place where an old stone wall borders a cornfield. His work was finished. It was time for him to leave. Now he's off somewhere, quietly waiting for the rest of us. And with his passing, for me, something sweet has gone out of the air, and the wine has turned to vinegar. Vincent used to say, we take a train to reach a city. We take death to reach a star. There are no words to express the sense of loss, the grief that I feel. It's a grief without comfort, a grief that I should carry with me for as long as I live. But I'm not alone in my agony. Some of his true friends share a measure of my sorrow. And at the cemetery, before we returned him to the earth, all of his friends gathered round, the artists, merchants, farmers, beggars, even some of the beggars off the streets. They knew of his genius and how special he was. But I wanted to tell them something about my brother, so they would know him like I knew him. They had to know what he stood for, what he believed in. And again, I couldn't do it. I couldn't speak. And then the moment was gone, and it was too late. Later, after everyone had drifted away, when I was alone again, I was reminded of the words of Ernest Renan, Vincent's favorite quotation. To act well in this world, one must sacrifice all personal desires. The people who become the missionaries of religious thought have no other fatherland than this thought. Man is not on the earth merely to be happy, nor even to be simply honest. He's here to realize great things for humanity, to attain nobility, and to surmount the vulgarity of the life of nearly every individual. And that was the credo by which my brother lived, to accomplish noble things for mankind. And he did. He did. Now, I thank you. At last, I've managed to say the words. And I thank you. I thank you. Now perhaps I can find some peace. My only hope is that Vincent has found the rest that he was so longing for. Life was such a burden to him. And now, as often happens, people will be so full of praise for his talents. Oh, my friends, he was so my own brother.